much salmon right now on this river from Memorial Day till the 4th. The parking lot would be full and there would be probably 25 fishermen fishing morning and night all the time, for 30 days.
We would probably once again have 2 or 3 salmon lodges, probably a couple of restaurants. And, it would bring people in from all over New England and in some cases from all over the country.
We would have that same crowd back here. We'd have a generation of fishermen to come back to this river. I'm going to say it would be even greater than it was before if we had fishing.
It really helped the economy a lot, and they talk about the Miramichi being worth $125 million a year to Canada. I know that all the rivers in Washington County wouldn't be worth that much, but it'd be worth a lot. There'd be a noticeable increase in the economy if we had a run of salmon in these 5 rivers down there.
I've been a salmon angler, I would say, since I was 10 years old. The first salmon I caught, I was 10 years old, and it weighed 8 1/4 pounds in front of my house.
I just remember I started fishing for these in 1959, and I can remember during the course of the fishing season, driving to the pools on the Denny's, upriver, driving to the upriver pools on the East Machias or the Machias. And you could always find fish in every pool every time you went, and whether you caught them or not was a different story, but there were always a lot of fish and you could find them, and you could get away from the crowds like the Mill Pool and Whitneyville and the Cable Pool and Charlie's Rips, and find fish every time you went, everywhere you went. Now, you can spend the whole summer trying to find one, and there aren't any.
I never was much of a salmon angler. In those days, most of us couldn't afford to buy the equipment to fish with. Some of us did catch them illegal to eat and did sell a few.
When I got out of the Navy in about 1945, it was about the time that they were starting to fish for salmon on the Narraguagus and other Washington County rivers. And I bought a rod and had some people show me something about salmon fishing. So I was a salmon fisherman for the next 20, 25 years.
I've been fishing Atlantic salmon for 50 years.
A long time, 30 years. Well, the East Machias, Denny's, Renoose in Canada, Miramichi, Dungarden.
I've been a fisherman for 50 years, salmon fisherman.
Well, I can tell you that I really sincerely believe that the fact that there was Atlantic salmon fishing in Cherryfield greatly influenced our desire to buy this. We bought this property with a wild idea that this was going to be a camp.
Yeah.
And if we wanted to come down here and fish, it'd be right here.
But the largest salmon that a recorded caught on the Narraguagus was by Harry Smith, I believe. Everybody fished here knew Harry Smith. He used to make his own bear, famous bear flies, you know, bear hair, and
That's his fly?
yeah, he made his own flies, and he sold a lot of them. Harry Smith. The weight was close to 30 pounds. I've seen it in the I think it's in Augusta up there on the records of the salmon. I think it's listed up there in the museum in Augusta State House. And I do, but I do remember a salmon caught illegally that weighed, I believe, about 31 pounds. We get up there. I don't remember just who caught that one.
Well, of course, I was here when Harry Smith caught his biggest fish in the old Stillwater pool before there was any dam there.
Well, I believe my brother Henry probably was caught. It was, I believe it was 21 pounds, some odd ounces. It's in that the Ackley trophy list, so you can get it down for right. But it was 21 some odd pounds that I know of. I've seen bigger salmon than that, though. I saw the bigger salmon up here and stuff like it. Charlie was up at Libby Brook, you know, and stuff like it. We were just looking around, you know, where the salmon were and one thing and another, and we knew they was laying down over that log in the hole at Libby Brook. Put that paddle down there, and the first thing you know, this old big salmon come out, and I mean, he was a big one. He'd well break any records they got in this area.
I believe the exact weight, 26.5 pounds, caught by Harry Smith. Had lived in Cherryfield, I believe, all his life, and he operated what he called the Salmon Lodge on the other side of the river.
I saw a 28-pounder. It was in the 28-pound range. Cameron Clark from Portland caught it back in the 80s. And I saw I think it was 27-pounder Ken Bland from the Atlantic Salmon Authority caught on the East Machias. Those are the two biggest I've seen caught. But I've seen bigger fish in the river.
I never caught very many sizable fish in my life. A little over 15 pounds is the largest salmon I ever caught in Cherryfield. That fish is out there and had him mounted.
Biggest one I ever caught was 18 pounds.
18 pounds.
Biggest fish I ever caught, I caught on the Dennings River and Charlie's Rips up here, weighed 17 pounds and 3/4.
14.5 pounds on the Dennings River.
My largest fish was 10 pounds. It was in Ringbolt Pool, just below the house here.
17 pounds.
So the biggest salmon I ever caught, that wasn't angling. The biggest one I ever caught myself was about 15 pounds.
Well, there's several things though that caused the decline of salmon, and of course, everyone's got his own opinion. That's the trouble right there with the salmon fishing. One person would think that the stocking people ought to put more fish in. One people blames the knitters out in the ocean. One people blames the seals and the cormorants and everything else. Well, it's a combination is what it really is. The best way to go about it is to start off naturally getting a good spawning ground and stuff like it. And the first thing you have to do there is eliminate these beaver. The beaver dams themselves, within these creeks that they're going up, they're damming it up, they're silting it. And what happens when the salmon comes in and lay their eggs, he has no place to go, so they pass the eggs and the eggs won't hatch. In other words, they're filled it over, covered over, and so forth like it. So it's being worked on, because I know the Salmon Federation has been working on it, because I've been helping them do it. And they eliminate these dams along, especially the dead dams and so forth, although the green dams have to come to along with the beaver, because they'll build them right back on you.
Spraying, clay cutting, warming the water up, an awful amount of seals, cormorants, and no stocking.
Well, I think the cutting off of the forest up the river has certainly been detrimental to the salmon run. Seals, there's all kinds of seals down there. I remember in the 60s when Harry Smith ran off the water in March and April, and so the water was so low in June that the fish didn't come. And I used to go down in the Narrows, and I used to watch them, watch the salmon. They'd work in with the tide and drop back with the tide. And all the time that I spent down there watching those fish, probably sometimes there was at least 100 fish there, jumping and rolling in one thing or another. I never saw a seal down there. Now, if there'd been any seals around at that time to mount anything, they would have been right up there on top of those fish. And they were not. So seals, I'm sure, cause a big problem. And cormorants, the sheldrake, of course, there's an outside problem there that nobody knows quite what it is, but I'm sure that has something to do with it. There are just so many things that have caused the decline.
I think there are many reasons, including predators in salt water, possible diseases, the erratic water flow in the Narraguagas and other Washington County rivers, and no one really knows what the problem is.
They're innumerable. One big major one is seals, which we have complained about a number of times, which goes unheeded each time we mention it. But for years, I was in the post office around the bank of the river, and I've watched them daily. I've watched them catch fish. The river at one place is about, it's about 25 yards across, and I've watched the seals take them. Now those salmon would come up on the flood tide, not too far below the surface, and that seal is a swimmer. A salmon hasn't got a show. Cormorants, number two, when they stalk the fry here, look, it's something else to watch them.
There's numerous reasons. It'll start out with way back in the 60s, the runs, in the early 70s, the runs really started dropping down. And at that point, we had a lot of poaching problems up on the river. And there weren't any limit on salmon at that time.
As far as I'm concerned, probably a lot of everything go together. I feel that the salmon really started to go just as soon as they found out where the salmon congregate in the North Atlantic. That's the worst part, as far as I'm concerned.
No, except in my own mind, I think it's a natural decline because everything in the world is against the Atlantic salmon. Some people realized 35 or 40 years ago that they haven't got a chance because everything that they require is being destroyed by technology and the advance of civilization. And it was a hopeless situation. Of course, many people realize that, but that's the truth as far as I'm concerned. There's no one thing to blame for it. Of course, the commercial fishing and due to technology, it became so overpowering that they'd run 20 miles of drift nets and all that thing for one ship. It's unbelievable. Narraguaga Salmon Association was one of those cheerleaders to build the dam. And I couldn't understand that, but there was a reason for it, certainly.
Well, I don't know if there's any real famous people or not. There was a lot of, like was mentioned earlier, well-to-do people, doctors, lawyers, and I don't know if we had any real famous people stay at our cottages, but we had a lot of people stay there.
Locals or?
No, there's all from people from Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and up and down the East Coast.
Oh, he's the greatest salmon fisherman.
You don't know Lee Wolf? Oh. Where was his camp in Canada, Red?
He was primarily in Newfoundland.
Newfoundland.
A lot of fishing around.
Yeah. We had a lot of notables. Admiral Hoover. A lot of professional people. And not, they were all repeats. They kept coming and took an interest in the club. And very generous givers also. Worthy members, you might call them.
Lee Wolf was here once, and I think Bud Levitt, who was the Bangor outdoor editor there, he called me and said that he'd heard from Lee Wolf, and he would be up here on such and such a date, and could I take him around and show him where to fish. And I told Bud, you know what it is. You don't need any guide or anything on the Narragansett River. You just follow the crowd.
Oh, I've heard that people like Bud Levitt and I guess Ted Williams fished it. Not that I've seen him, but I've heard he fished it. I've been a member for 40 years.
I am a member, 60 years.
I helped organize the local club back in 1950, known as the Narragansett Salmon Association. And I was an officer and director of that group for probably 35 years. I'm no longer a member. Well, technically they're active, but they're not very active. You know, they're sort of faded away.
We used to have, all three clubs used to have a lot of out-of-state members, and a lot of these out-of-state members, the 1 week vacation of the year or 2 week vacation was spent right here in Machias, or right in this area, and that's what they did. 2 weeks off, go to Machias and fish salmon. They don't come anymore.
The salmon fishing brought a lot of money into Cherryfield as well into Millbridge. There were 2 or 3 lodges that catered to salmon fishermen in May and June. And in fact, I had one next door that had 6 rooms that catered to fishermen in May and June, and then tourists in July and August.
The man who reaped the most profit, in my estimation, would be Alva Tracy, which had Tracy's Inn. And he had a good following of old-time salmon fishermen, most of them from Massachusetts. And then he had the inn, and then he built 4 or 5 like motel units, cabins.
Oh, the salmon fishing has contributed to the economy through, like the hotel used to be here, it's closed now. Robinson's Cottages was always full of fishermen. It's definitely that there's no sports anymore.
Oh, definitely has, because if anyone that was around in the 50s and 60s, and you'd have at least 200 people lined up on the bridges down here and so forth. Wow. I mean, people have no idea unless they see it, you know, how much money that brings in. I'm talking about tourist money. I'm not talking about the local money. The local money is here. And people wouldn't believe it that when you can't find a place to park all the way from the churches down across any place at all to get down to walk to the bridge to look over the side and see the salmon. And they're not fishers. Most of them people are not fishers. But some of them would be, and some of them would go fishing and so forth, and they'd hire guides, local people, and stuff like it. So it made an income, plus all the hotels, the restaurants. When you get there and you have them stay overnight and everything else, and spend some time here.
Definitely. With salmon, when the run started in May, you could look forward to, we didn't have too many had one hotel, but anything that was available here was filled up. Plus Pembroke, and they'd come as far as Machias. But the place was full of out-of-staters, and they were good spenders. It had to help the economy of the town. And as I say again, very generous. If we'd asked for something for the club, more than will it.
I don't know when the spraying of pesticides began, as I was not around very often. In the olden days, even after World War II, the spraying was done mostly by horses hauling a spraying machine. Also, a lot of it was done by hand on the smaller lots and things. You'd find them each morning heading up on the barrens, and they'd have the horses, a pair of horses, and one of them spray wagons with a big spray machine on it, and they'd blow it quite a ways, you know. And they'd go mornings when it was calm, there was no wind, and it was kind of maybe a dew that morning they liked, you know what I mean? And they'd spread that on their stick then, so it would stick long enough to come. And that's the way they sprayed them by hand and by horse and two-team horses and things like a lot of them. You see them all the time, early in the morning, spraying season. They'd be heading up there. So to get there about early morning, crack of daylight again.
We had spraying here, and I think it's done a lot of damage. They sprayed right up and down the Denny's River. I was one of several people that was fishing on the river, and they went right over us, and we could even taste it. That spring, the next spring, when we was bird fishing, they sprayed and you'd see birds dead along the river. But that's a long time ago, and you might still be seeing the effects of it, who knows?
I'm not against spraying, I'm for spraying. I believe a man has to eat. You got to get that tree sprayed, or you haven't got no lumber and stuff like it. I don't mean spray the water, and they've done a real good job trying to keep away from the water. But I don't believe the spraying hurt the salmon or hurt fish hardly any at all, because if they'd have to eat an awful lot of sprayed bugs to do them any harm at all. They're just not going to get them. You know, this is something that man and the ecology tick is just against. I'm against spraying. I'm against spraying. You know, they're against everything. I haven't found nothing they're really for too much. You know, come right down to it.
It had a big effect on the river. Now they sprayed. Well, within a short distance of the river, over here, that's where a number of residents collected substantial sum from the spraying. It took a lot of the gardens around this section, so it couldn't help from hitting the river. Likewise, up above on the river, that we know not, but the same thing happened there.
I can remember when they first experimented around the 1930s. I can remember going up to Du Bois to see a biplane arrive from down south to start the spraying. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the old biplane cracked up on the way up, so I didn't see them in action. But I believe it was spotty from that time on. It's only in recent years that it's been a more organized spraying plan. 1930 was when the biplane arrived. One thing I mentioned before is that I don't know that they've ever researched the effect of Velpar or any other agricultural sprays. What's the effect on the river, on the fish? I think that's been avoided for political reasons.
Poaching has never been a big problem. Poaching is here, anywhere, you know, and stuff like it. And there's always a few that will take over his limit. In other words, there's a good day on the river. He's got extra salmon there, and he's allowed 2, we'll say, or 1. And that extra 1 is there, and he knows it, and he can get him. He'll look around, make sure no one's around, grab him and run, you know. Now, I won't say a sportsman will do that. He won't do it. You know, he'll catch his salmon, and that's it, and let someone else catch the next one. But it does happen, and generally the game wardens get right on him, because there's people like myself who gladly tell him, who is, who's doing it?
No, I don't think that you could blame the loss of the salmon runs to poaching. I think the other reasons are much more likely to have caused it.
Poaching has been a problem on the river since the first run of salmon. I can recall when the mills were down here by the bridge, and the dam was there then. They had a fishway, and the fishway worked. But the salmon would congregate. You could see the bridge right in front of that bridge. Well, at noontime, when the mill was going, those fellows worked the mill and say, look, we better get a salmon. Well, any kids around there, they didn't want you. So they'd send, I know I made many errands. They'd send me down to a store, it's probably half a mile. They'd give you a couple of cents and say, go down and get me a sawed-off screwdriver or a double-handed monkey wrench. Well, you get down to the store and you ask the clerk, and they knew. So they'd say, well, you wait a few minutes, we look around. Of course, they'd keep you a while. So when you went back, of course, you didn't have anything, but they'd got their fish at that time. That was one method. That went on daily. When the state had the fishway, the wardens wasn't, we only had about one to take care of everything. They'd raid that fishway, very often. And they found out the hours that the fish were entering that fishway at about the best time, which I found was from 10 to 2, 10 at night to 2 in the morning. And it only took 2. They'd go up and shove a plank in. Another fellow would go down at the end, and a couple of minutes that fishway was dry. I'd take a bag of the club and walk up through the pens. That was the fish.
I don't believe it was ever a problem in the Depression days anyway, back when we was around the river, and I don't think it ever was in Narragansett much of one. I think a great number of us would get some to eat, yes, because the fishermen were quite scarce at that time, wasn't many fishermen around, and the fish were plentiful at that time. The mill crew would help us. If they saw a warden coming down the end of Stillwater Road, they'd come over the mill window and holler, get out of there, the warden to come in. Well, we knew every warden's car, but when they changed cars, sometimes they got us, you know. Stillwater Mills, you watch them coming, you know, and the mill crew would help us. They'd holler, oh no, it's illegal. Oh, you can't take them only with fly rod, you see.
Even back then?
Oh yeah, you couldn't, we could use angleworm for anything fish, but we couldn't take a salmon unless you used a fly. So and a lot of them, the time we did, jigged them under the dam, jig in, you got off quick. You couldn't turn them when you got them back close to the tail, but we got them always. Salmon. But the river was full of them, huh? So I don't think it hurt anything.
When there's fish around, there's poachers around, and the main way they get them is net them. And in the summer, when the river gets hot, the fish go to certain places like the side tributaries because they're cooler, or the spring holes. And all the poachers know where those places are, and they go after them. Mm-hmm. That's why we have wardens.
Yeah.
Oh yes. They caught people that they was poaching upriver. In the summertime probably was the word. When fish got in the spring holes, they had people that would net them and stuff, which they caught. And I think that done a lot of damage. They took a lot of good big spawning fish out of the river. But we had a warden here that made up his mind he was going to catch them, and he caught them. And I don't know if there's been any since then, because there hasn't been too many salmon either. A lot of the wood harvesting done a lot of damage. Denny's River was always one of the coldest waters, they said, in the state of Maine. After they started clear cutting, you could see Denny's River water. You would get 3 days of warm weather in June. The water would go above 70 degrees, which it never ever done. You always could fish Denny's River till 4th of July before you ever had any warm water. The whole headwaters was cut right off. They're just not active. Fish won't come in warm water, and your fishing is done. When the water gets to 70, 72 degrees, fishing is all done until it cools off.
The state allowed the paper companies to clear cut where they wanted to, but likewise they cut everything to the river. And a good many places the debris was lodged in the river. Not a tree was saved along the bank of the river. And as you come down it now, you can see some places they did miss, I suppose, too many jackfurs.
I don't believe it. People say it, but it doesn't believe it. I believe that the wood harvesting itself helps the river. There are a lot of people, everyone else is against it. They say, no, no, no. Well, these logs in the river, when you find some of these salmons up in some of these mouths of these brooks and one thing or another, what they're laying up against? A sunken log. To him, that's his little lure. That's where he's going to live, right there. And you don't believe it. Ask any of the old fishers where they're at. If they know where the salmon is, he's laying right in next to that log. That's like home sweet home to him, another buddy there with him.
Wood harvesting was done back started in 72 or 3 and escalated to the early 80s when we had the spruce budworm infestation. And it definitely had a problem, done a number on the river as far as the runoff and the siltation that ended up in some of the rips up there. There's all green grass now. It used to be gravel, now it's green grass growing. And it made it so easy for people to get up there, to get to these spring holes. But before, you had to walk a mile or paddle up there to get to these spring holes. And it made it so easy for people to get in there, and that's when the poaching really started heavy upriver. It was after these roads was built. And it's been a problem. It's starting to, I can notice the difference now the last 5, 6, 7 years. When we get a big rain, the river doesn't turn nearly as silty as it did, and it comes up slower and it goes down slower. I can remember way back when it got a big rain, it come up real slow and go down real slow. And then after wood harvesting, I can notice a difference in it. Go up quick, down quick, and a lot of siltation in it. At the last 5, 6, 7 years, it's getting better. When you get a rain now, it doesn't muddy up so bad, and it comes up slower and stays and drops back down slower. It's starting to improve now. Those cuts up there have grown up to 15, 20 feet tall, and things are it's starting to reverse in that aspect anyway.
I don't think that the wood harvesting ever had a negative effect on the Narraguagas. It might, maybe in still, I see a lot of Penobscot and them and all them, they stopped the river drives there, yes. Probably some bark is accumulated in the rivers. I wouldn't know what it is, of course, everywhere. I know on the Benton Lake and all them places. But, of course, some bark I wrote down there had accumulated from log drives, I suppose. But I never, and they used to bring pulp down in the olden days. But I don't believe it ever had any trouble with salmon. I don't always playing salmon around. I mean, up until they started to go this time.
The hatchery stocking program that's going on now, in my mind, is worthless. They're using tar for broodstock, which has never ever seen the salt water. They don't know what the wild is. And we were told by Jerry Morancic that it was an experiment anyway. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't even believe the fry is surviving that they're putting in.
Well, the hatchery stocking program is real good. The only one thing I have any gripe at all, they're not doing enough of it. What I'm saying by that, I'm 100% for stocking fish because the way I understand it and so forth like it, and what I've heard and read and one thing or another, they're going ahead and trying to get too pure a strain. This is not going to work. It's not there. It's the same old salmon. I don't care whether he come out of Alaska and you took his eggs and put him in the Machias River or what. He's still a salmon.
The stocking program, I really think they need some lessons. But again, you can argue till the cows come home. They're going to listen. They're not going to take your advice. They listen to you with both ears, but one ear is saying, look, I don't want to hear it, because he doesn't have the know-how or the what this program is all about.
My first thought would be, I would like to see this river, as the others have said, and as we suggested to Ed Baum one night down in Eastport, I think it was 6 years ago. He came down and asked us for some ideas, and we gave him. Were you there?
No.
We told him what we'd like to have. We said we'd like to have a stocking of 50,000 smolt, 50,000 par, and put these fish that they're raising over as fry, put those in. And do this for about 5 years to see what would happen. Now originally, Mr. Good was incorrect in what he said where the fish came that started the Penobscot program. Those fish came from the Downeast rivers. And so what I would be saying is that you're going to be closer to getting connection fish that are connected to this river here if you use Penobscot fish than anything else. So that's what I'd like to see that done for about 5 years. I don't care if the river's closed. I think it'd be a good idea probably to close it for that 5 years, and let's see what will happen. In 5 years' time, you'll know whether it'll work or not.
Putting the salmon farmers out of business would be like going up and tell Georgia Pacific they got to close tomorrow. It's not going to happen. I don't believe it will. It may. I think that they're going to have to take and sterilize the fish or something so they won't cross, if that's what they believe is crossed with. There's no wild fish. Anyway, they call them rivers Pacific. That's why I think they ought to get a strain and stop one.
It would have been in the early 60s, because it was 1960 that I went to Canada on what I called my vacation, and talked to Wilfred Carter at the Gaspé hatchery. And I learned everything that I could about what they were doing, because this smolt stocking was introduced from Norway and Sweden, you know. It was successful over there. But it took several years to get the Salmon Commission and the biologists to see the points that we were making, and to absorb what was being sent down from Canada. This chief biologist that we had, and I won't mention his name, might not be wise, he did not want to rely on Canada for anything. He wanted to learn everything right here in Maine, which meant delays in introducing this smolt rearing. And at that point, the Craig Brook hatchery was not large enough probably to take on what we had in mind. In fact, one of the things that we did, the Federation, was to institute a crash program through Congress to enlarge Craig Brook. And we had one man who was a senator at the time, Stanley Tupper from Boothby, who was very much interested in what we were doing, and he promoted this crash program, and we were in close touch with the head of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service headquarters in Boston. So we were able to, you know, get our 2 cents in there, and with people who were paying attention to us.
I don't think there's any question that the aquaculture fish have had a part of the problem. But on the other hand, I think Washington County needs every job that they can get. So I would not be in favor of shutting them down. I think one thing they should do is they should do away with this European strain, and but you know, I don't think they can close the aquaculture people down.
I think the fondest memory I have of this river was the year that they built this clubhouse. And things really got going there. The club got organized. We started, at that time, we had, well, we'd have a riverbank committee. We really was going ahead. We didn't know what we was doing. We know now that salmon like shade, but we was going along the river and we was cutting every shady place there was. We were doing what we thought was right. But the club got started and we got people interested. And when the other staters come, you sold them your proposition here. They could see it, the clubhouse, what you were doing. And very generous. And the club did prosper financially and what a boy. And then to see that same crowd come back satisfied, which they really were.
I enjoyed the years when the salmon were plentiful. And when you had a lot of happy fishermen coming in to display their catch and posing for photographs. And that would probably be the best period for me, was the 1950s.
Back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, places like the mill pool in East Machias, there's a best pool in East Machias. It's the mill pool. And that pool was exposed by some salmon angler vandals that breached the hydroelectric dam and made it so that it couldn't be closed up as a dam anymore. And when that dam was breached, it exposed a very nice salmon pool about a quarter of a mile above the Route 1 bridge. And that became known as the mill pool, and there's a state park there now that the Salmon Club maintains. And the things that used to go on there were funny, because it was the kind of place the dubs didn't dare to leave, and the guys that knew how to fish could go in there and catch fish at will. And the competition was really fierce, and that was the fun part of it, going there and intimidating the other fishermen with your flies or what you thought they ought to be using to catch the one fish that's out there, and it got to be pretty funny.
Being able to grow up in a set of sporting camps and meeting all these people that come down here for years for salmon fishing. And I have salmon flies that were given to me by people years and years ago, and I still have them. I worked on this clubhouse when I was 10 years old. My grandfather was here, my father, Lippy Cushion, Ed Bartlett, my father built the fireplace there. And, you know, just a lot of memories going way back. And you know, the last few years there, you haven't seen anybody, you know, and people are making friends and having a good time and telling stories and all that is just a thing of the past here. It's a crying shame that has been lost because of the salmon run decline.
Well, I've had so many fond memories, but one I think of that I think should be mentioned, because I don't think there are very many rivers that it happened on. In 1980, we only had a big year. One morning in June, I saw 5 fish hooked all at the same time. They were playing, 5 different people were playing 5 different fish, and they landed the 5 of them. And I think that's a record for, I don't believe that's happened on many rivers. I know I've told this to biologists many times, and they always roll their eyes, but I'd like to put it on the record that in the year 1960, up in Batson's Meadow Spring Hole, that's the best spring hole on the river, I saw 500 salmon, adult salmon, in that one spring hole. And nobody will ever convince me that I didn't. In fact, there were so many there that I always say 200 because I think they might believe me. But I'm telling you, I really honestly believe there was 500 salmon in there. They were spread out as wide as the river was and layered on top of one another. We used to have a charge of cold spring water that came in there, and so I witnessed that. And I've seen many times, I've seen 100 fish in a bunch, and those were witnessed by wardens, and this would be up to Robinson's cottages off in that area there, off the sandy beach there, and up and around Scott's Trout. So at one time, we had a tremendous run of fish in this river.
My fondest memory on the river, I've got so many of them, that probably people don't realize that they had one of the greatest things in their backyard they ever had, and it's gone now. And there's so many stories that you could tell of things that happened here. It was like something being born every spring. You look for the out-of-staters to come, people you knew. You could always sit up here and say, my friend Albert Mahar would be coming in at a certain time, which he would. That's all gone. Never in my lifetime will I ever see it again. And it's going to be a long time before anyone else will.